what are we watching today?
Today we're watching Darkman. Came out in 1990, starring Liam Neeson, Frances McDormand, Larry Drake,
Colin Friels.
and is completely unhinged Sam Raimi.
This was his first studio film, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He'd done a few feature films, but I think it was his first Hollywood studio film. He wanted to do a comic book adaptation, and he couldn't get rights to some of the other comic book characters, so he wrote his own character based on the 1930s sort of horror films.
What have I become?
Even though it's got a few sort of horror-related things, but it's more comic book, but it's definitely Sam Raimi style. Like, it's got all of the traits of Sam Raimi. Things flying at the camera.
It's got awesome camera moves and composited shots and Ted Raimi. And of course it's got Bruce Campbell in it.
As a real short cameo at the end.
Sam wanted him to play Darkman. And Universal went, pfft.
They had to get a name actor.
And the Oldsmobile is in there too.
What's it about? I mean, it's a pretty simple story. It's kind of just revenge, really.
Pretty much, it's a revenge story because Liam plays Peyton Westlake, who's a researcher who is conveniently into researching replacement skin for burn victims.
But he can't quite get it to last.
Oh,
Like,
no,
it keeps
it
on
can never
disintegrating
last.
after 90 minutes or something.
Shit.
And his girlfriend,
Well, Julie, there's so much
can't remember her name,
work this out, Julie.
Yeah,
but
what's it?
she comes across a document that shows that her boss, land developer, who's played by Colin Friels, might be a bit on the shonk. And when he sends his goons around to collect it, they rough Liam up and then murder him, or they think they murder him. And unfortunately, they end up creating Darkman.
They find him, and he's just this unnamed burn victim.
Well, that's it. He gets a crazy doctor. Because it's so funny. There's this scene in the hospital, and it's the crazy doctor going,
Now, we use the Rank-of-Eric's technique. Personally, I give him a 9 on the buzzard scale.
They've disconnected his pain receptors.
yes, but unfortunately it means he might have moments of...
Doesn't that give him like super strength as well,
Well,
or
it sets his
enhanced
adrenaline
strength?
off, and
Yeah, his adrenaline,
everything's
that's
out of
right.
whack. So when he goes, "Wah!" which he does a lot in this.
So he's left for dead, horribly scarred, burnt.
Hugely
And-
disfigured. But what do you know? He might have something that he can use and come up with ways to pretend to be other people, completely ignoring the fact that he can't change his height or his voice,
He gets all his old gear that he can.
which still works after the explosion.
He manages to set up a lab, and he can start creating these masks. See, this is one of the things that really doesn't make sense. This machinery and these computers, from just a few photos that he takes from a distance, can instantly create a mask of a person.
Yeah.
And yet the picture of him has bits missing because it was from the fire or something. And so he sets that reconstructing himself, which could just be a mirror image, and yet it's going to take 571 hours, was it?
Yeah, it's something like that. It's 571 hours as opposed to maybe 3 minutes of Photoshop with the clone tool.
But they needed to give him a bit of a delay so that he can create his face before he can go and see his girlfriend.
It's all right, Julie. Julie.
Okay, so Liam Neeson in this. He's pretty over the top,
He's really over the top.
and it's fun. That's
Oh, but it works for it. Take that fucking elephant.
Liam's voices, again, that doesn't make sense as well, how he can take on other people and change his height and all that, but then also completely change his voice.
Just fine.
And then when he does become himself again, he just talks normally. And then as soon as he doesn't have the mask on, he's all sort of...
Yeah, I just want to know how he talks because, yeah, sure, when he's wearing the mask, but when he talks without the mask, he doesn't have any lips. How does he say that shit without having any lips? That would have made an interesting 90 minutes.
It also doesn't make sense how his whole bone structure, how the muscles all still seem to work on his face, like it all connects up.
They don't talk about, yes, he doesn't feel any pain, but he would have died of a massive infection about a week after he broke out of the hospital.
He's always wearing these grotty bandages.
He's got grotty bandages and he lives in a shithole. No antibiotics, burnt down to the bone. He's fine. Nah. Frances McDormand is what's-her-face. She's always good value. I like Frances McDormand. She's great. And even in this, where she's just got this role, she does it well, even though it doesn't really ask for much. She just tends to look confused, but she probably had that look anyway, actually, opposite Liam and whatever the fuck he was doing.
Apparently there was a bit of tension in the filming with her and Sam Raimi, like he didn't understand her or something. He was saying they didn't
gel.
See that they were making the same film or something.
Larry Drake makes an awesome henchman.
He's a great bad guy.
As
Robert G. Durant.
And his thing for collecting fingers.
Like he's got a very distinctive, kind of odd, very comical look in this as well. A very comic book.
But all the henchmen.
A lot of his henchmen also have a very weird comic book, exaggerated look.
You've got the dude with the long hair. You've got a one-legged guy who's always hopping.
Yeah, and the bald guy.
And then you have Ted.
Well, he's got one crowning scene.
Well, he's the first one that Westlake goes after. The scene where he's hoisted out of the manhole. And then you have Colin Friels.
He's not doing a very good American accent.
No, every now and then a bit of Aussie sends to come through.
Look about you. It's all mine.
He stands out as sort of a bit grating in there. I mean, to be fair, Liam Neeson's accent isn't great either.
No.
He's always got that weird fake American accent, even today.
But there's so much going on there that you just sort of...
there's more.
The accent's the least of Liam's problems. I love the camera work in this film.
Well, yeah, that gets back to the Sam Raimi-ness. Like, he's always had fun with camera movement.
And lots of compositing, lots of sped up, lots of crazy wacky shit going on there.
Yeah, there's all the sort of the tilted angles and the sort of zoom in and the tilts, the close-ups of his eye, his eyes and montages. And towards the end, there's a pretty awesome action sequence, like the chase action sequence with the helicopters.
They got a lunatic to fly that chopper. They are flying in the middle of the CBD with a dude hanging off underneath the bottom of a chopper, and they're buzzing buildings and they're doing all sorts of stuff. Like, it's crazy somewhere. But and the thing is, it's all real. These days, CG and blah, 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 blah. None of it would be real. That's all real.
Oh, there's a few close-ups of Peyton where it's the sort of keyed...
They took a stuntman and tied him to
the actual stuntman stuff.
Underneath the thing and flung him around underneath the chopper.
Excuse me.
It holds up.
That's pretty comical as well. When he comes down on the road, he's running along the road and between the cars all coming at him.
Oh, there's that great shot.
There's also a great miniature, like the factory, when that gets blown up. I really enjoy going back and watching films with all that kind of visual effects in it. It's just very enjoyable. It actually holds up better, and even when you sort of see that it's a model, I find that enjoyable when you know it's a model. It's like it just seems cooler. It was back in that era when the behind the scenes of films and the visual effects in films was actually interesting.
When they had movie magic. They used to actually say, oh, movie magic, how do they do it? Whereas now they go, oh, we rendered it. There's some serious green screen going on in this film. And that's looking a bit ropey these days, like that's showing its age. But then again, Darkman's 30 years old.
It sort of fit in with that era and what you expected from that era.
Darkman didn't test well, and they didn't really know what to do with it.
Apparently it tested better when they put the Danny Elfman score on it.
It works for it.
And it's a very Danny Elfman score, and it fits in with that sort of
Loopy,
light-hearted, more comic style, in that sort of Tim Burton era of Danny Elfman. And it does really fit. Yeah, I think this is still at that early stage, a lower budget. It wasn't already a big franchise like Spider-Man or anything like that, or a big name. It was a new thing, so he probably had a bit more freedom to just play around with it and do his own thing. Back in the 80s, late 80s, 90s, did films have more flair that you think? Like there was just something more about them. They maybe didn't take themselves as seriously. There's just something about them. They actually let the filmmakers make their films.
Yeah, it was filmmakers making films, not marketing executives.
The film we got in the end is very enjoyable, and I've always enjoyed it.
Going back and watching it again.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it for quite a few years.
Very enjoyable. Darkman is well worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of Sam.
And Frances McDormand playing...
Julie.
Why can't I never remember her name?
I don't know.
Like, it's weird.
If only they said it in the movie more often. So thanks for watching this episode of VHS Gold. If you like what you saw and want to see some more of it, don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you'll see the next one when it pops up.